Right, well, it's 3:30 UK time. I think we should get started. I have to say, I've been looking forward to this webinar for some time. We've been wanting to do a Q&A for a while, and we've had so many wonderful questions come in. And the questions are so good, in fact, that I realized I couldn't answer them all by myself. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined by my colleague, Fiona. So Fiona, would you like to quickly say hello?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's, as I said, Fiona Goddard. I'm the Senior Education Consultant at Whizz Education. But my background is I've been a teacher in primary schools for over 20 years. And more importantly, I'm a parent to three girls myself as well. So it's nice to see you all.
Brilliant. So we've got loads of questions to get through, questions that many parents from all across the world have sent in. So we'll bring those up. And I'd also like to say, if you're on the chat, please do introduce yourselves. We can see a couple of you have already. Please do feel free to ask any questions on the chat. We have Hannah Chisholm with us as well. Hannah heads up our support team. And so if you have any specific questions around Math-Whizz, if you happen to be on Math-Whizz, or if you're just curious to learn more, I'm sure Hannah will be happy to address those. And if there's any particular questions that we spot on the chat, we'll gladly go through those as well. But as I said, we've got a number of questions that you sent through, and there's nothing quite like just getting stuck in. So I'll bring up the first one. Just give me a sec. Yeah, hopefully you can see that. So we have a question here. We're unsure about what is happening with schools in September. How can we best support our children? That's from Donna from Cramlington. So thank you, Donna, for that question. Well, talk about jumping in at the deep end. Why don't you take that one, Fiona? Nice and easy to start with.
Okay. I mean, I think we're all aware that, we've had a lot of disruption to our children's education over these past few months, and obviously it's still unsure now moving forward. So I think, my advice would be, first of all, go with the guidance of your school. That's really important, because hopefully they will support you and support you with the sorts of things that you should be using. Routines are paramount. It's really important that children have a routine, they have schedules to follow. So that's, if you can have those in place, if they do happen to be at home in September, that's going to really help them with how they're going to organise their day. But I think the most important thing to say here is that, you've got Math-Whizz, and Math-Whizz is something that can continually happen throughout any disruption. So regardless of what's happening around us, your child can still work on Math-Whizz and do all that learning. Scheduling in 60 minutes a week is what you need to do with them, and then they can just get on with it, and their learning will still progress in maths. So that would be my advice there.
And Fiona, how proactive do you think parents should be? Is the school holiday officially? We know how much strain teachers have been under the last few months. They probably welcome this break, but there's so much to think about, so many uncertainties. As a parent yourself, how pushy do you feel entitled to be with schools to really get that clarity?
I think, hopefully schools now have got some communication systems in place, so they will be communicating with you. But if you're really unsure, just don't be afraid to contact your school. They're there to support and help you as parents as well. So I would say don't hesitate. If you've got any questions, if you've got any worries or concerns, just get straight in contact with them. Or if you just want some support with some other ideas of what to do with your children at home, they're there to support you as well.
Good stuff. Okay, let's move on. Does the tutoring match the national curriculum? Why don't I take a stab at that, Fiona, and you can jump in with any other thoughts. I'd say broadly the answer is yes. I guess it depends on which curriculum you're referring to, and we can be very precise with that. So on Math-Whizz, if your child happens to be following the national curriculum here in England, we can tell you very precisely that we cover around 96% of that curriculum. That there's a few learning objectives that don't quite match because they don't really lend themselves well to online instruction. But for the most part, it's all covered. The most important thing to say, though, is that an online virtual tutor like Math-Whizz is really designed to adapt to your child's pace of learning. That's what it's most focused on. So yes, it does align to different national curriculums. We have schools all over the world following different curriculum schemes, different standards frameworks, all using Math-Whizz. But the reason to work with any tutor, whether it's a human tutor or a virtual tutor, is they're going to be guided by your child's specific needs. And in terms of the lessons that your child receives, in terms of the order in which certain lessons and topics appear, that's going to be based on a real analysis of where your child's gaps are and where they would most benefit from. So that's important to bear in mind. But I guess the short answer is yes, it does match the national curriculum. Anything to add, Fiona, or did I just completely nail that?
I think you completely nailed that, yeah.
In that case, we'll move on. My son is also doing online work from school. Should he do Maths-Whizz as well? We hear that quite often. So thank you to Judith for that. What do you have to say, Fiona?
Of course, they should do Maths-Whizz as well, because Maths-Whizz just complements any of the work that they're doing. So, what it's doing, as Junaid just mentioned, it's identifying the gaps that they possibly have in maths. There are so many topics, and our children do have gaps in particular areas in maths. So what it's doing is it's, in the background, working on that, building on those foundations for your child. So it's really important actually that they do Maths-Whizz as well. And you can agree with them they don't have to do it all in one go. You can schedule it over the week, breaking it down to small chunks. So I would say, yes, do it as well, because it complements what they're doing at school.
And we have a question here from Mal. So thank you, Mal. Mal is a maths teacher, and Mal would like to know how secondary pupils in particular could be supported by Maths-Whizz.
Okay, so what Maths-Whizz does is when they do their assessments, it actually identifies the areas that they're finding difficult. It also obviously identifies their strengths. So it doesn't really matter what age your child is, because if Maths-Whizz is appropriate, it will find out the areas that they need to work on, and then it will map out their own personal learning journey. So, we do have students who are in up to year 8 in schools who use Maths-Whizz, but we do have a lot of students who are far older but actually still have some huge gaps and barriers within mathematics. And what Maths-Whizz does is it helps support those. So it works almost as an intervention in working on those areas that they really need support in.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that our content currently covers foundation through to the end of year 8. So we do work with hundreds of secondary schools in the UK, thousands across the world, predominantly with year 7 and 8 students. But actually, as Fiona has said, you'll quite often find older age students that are preparing for their GCSEs, or were preparing for their GCSEs before they were cancelled, I guess. And they need that foundational knowledge, that they need some remedial support. And so making sure that they have the essential content from year 7 and 8 is really the stepping stone to their success, even in the older year group. So there are many different ways in which we support secondary schools, but if you feel like that could be relevant to your year 7 and 8 students, then please do get in touch. Of course, in year 7, you often have this challenge of taking in students from different cohorts across multiple primary schools. And so you're looking for a consistent baseline at the start of secondary school, particularly after a summer period, and particularly after a summer period like this year in particular, where there's so much disruption that's occurred. And I guess the first question that's front of mind to a lot of teachers is, where are my students at today? How much knowledge have they managed to accumulate? How much have they perhaps lost? And so having some consistent way of understanding where each individual student is essential, and that's exactly what Maths-Whizz is able to do. So I've got to say, this next one resonates with me a little. It says, I've just started. I'm struggling to get my daughter to finish the assessment. Can you help? I mean, my daughter's 18 months, so she's not quite started on Maths-Whizz, but it resonates because I've had many students over the years use Maths-Whizz. And let's make no bones about it. The initial assessment on Maths-Whizz is not the most fun your child is ever going to have doing mathematics. That comes next, once they've completed the assessment and they actually start to work through the interactive animated lessons in the tutor. That's when the fun and the learning really begins. But as a former human tutor myself, I can tell you the first thing I would always do when working with any student of any age and any ability is I'd want to understand where their learning needs are so that I can tailor my sessions accordingly. And so that's the purpose of that initial assessment. And it can take a while. It can take upwards of an hour at times, because the tutor is trying to get the most accurate and thorough reading of your child's particular needs. So there are some pieces of advice that I can hopefully offer. One is just to break it into small sessions. The progress will save after each topic, so that's fine. It's okay if you stagger it into 3 or 4 sessions. The most important thing is that your child doesn't feel judged. So if they're stuck on a particular question, that's okay. They just need to hit don't know yet. If they are struggling a little, that the tutor will pick that up and it will actually adapt the difficulty of the question, so they shouldn't be struggling for long. The most important thing, and I have to say this to every parent that I speak to when they're using Math-Whizz, is you have to resist that temptation, that instinct to kind of intervene and do the maths for them. However tempting it is to just move things along and do the questions for them, it's important to get an accurate reading of the child's needs. And so just allow them to hit don't know yet. That's perfectly fine. Like I said, the fun and the learning really begins once that assessment is complete. As a parent, you can look forward to an email that will give you your child's maths age, and it'll be broken down across different topics. That's very powerful insight that you can get. So that's what's waiting for you. And then for the child, once they finish the assessment, the whole experience opens up. They can go into all of the different plays elements. They can customize their avatar. And when they get into the tutor, as I said, the lessons will really come to life. The assessment doesn't really capture that, but it's well worth getting through for all of those benefits. If nothing else, as a parent, it tells you where your child's maths age is. And so I'd say, particularly if you're doing the 7-day free trial, or you're just getting that initial exposure to Math-Whizz, really make sure that you complete the assessment, because the experience isn't really complete without knowing your child's maths age. And yeah, we've got a related question from Tracy. Perhaps I'll pose this to you, Fiona. So this is perhaps more generally, the struggle is to engage your child in doing some work. And I don't think this is necessarily specific to Math-Whizz. I think maths in general is often seen as a bit of a chore. Battle like it's a punishment. That's often the way maths is perceived, right? You and I see maths as joyful and all the rest of it, but many people unfortunately do see maths as punishment. So how do we overcome that?
I think part of it is sitting down maybe with your child each week and maybe setting some goals, but maybe so that rather than you're trying to get them to do it, get them maybe to have some ownership over it. So don't give them any necessary choices, but you know, what you maybe have a schedule in front of you. Well, which days should we do it this week, and get them to have maybe some ownership over choosing some of the times that they want to do it. So rather than saying, right, go and do your Math-Whizz now, that sometimes can help. And I think it's just thinking about rewards and incentives as well that might just get them to do some work. So just think about, well, you know, set a timer, even things like that, so that they know that when that finishes, then they can have a short reward doing something so that you agree with. So I think it's about breaking it back down into small chunks, having a schedule, and trying to get them to have that ownership. And I think once they have more ownership of it and understand why they're doing it, then that can help as well.
Yeah, and we actually have a weekly planner that you can download. We'll share this in a follow-up email if you don't have it yet. And I really encourage you to download it if you can, print it off, and have your child fill that in, because that will really instill that sense of ownership. But Fiona, I want to ask, is there something to be said here about the way that maths is presented? Because I've got to say, I look at a lot of textbooks, standard maths textbooks, and that does feel like punishment. It's all quite mundane. Whereas a program like Math-Whizz is a whole different approach. It's intended to be very engaging. So is it a given that maths has to be a chore, or is there a way to make it fun from a teaching point of view?
I think, oh, definitely. I mean, I think what particularly children don't understand until they get slightly older is that maths is all around us. Everything we do involves mathematics. You know, there's so much maths that happens within the home. So I think once they have that understanding, and when maths becomes fun, they don't feel like they're doing work then either. So I think it's sometimes just trying to think of different ways to make it fun. And as Junaid said, a lot of what they do on Math-Whizz actually with the animations and the tasks that they do, it can give them a lot of fun and enjoyment, particularly with some of the humour that's there as well. So yeah, I think it's sometimes how, as a parent as well, it's just making sure that you have that very positive attitude towards mathematics as well, because that can help them see it in a positive light.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former mathematician, something you never really get over. And I would say if you're struggling in your relationship with mathematics, if it gives you anxieties, it's the issue isn't with you, it's the way that maths has been presented to you. There's always a way to make maths more interesting, and to be able to make more sense from it. I think there's a lot to be said about just how it's presented. And hopefully you'll see in Math-Whizz there's a very deliberate effort to make it meaningful and also very engaging. Okay, we're going away on holiday. Good times. Can we pause the tutoring and start again in September? What do you think, Fiona?
Okay, well, I think this is a really tricky one, because actually what's really important is consistency. And with Math-Whizz, all we're saying is 60 minutes a week. So when you break that into small chunks, that's not a huge amount of time that we're asking. So actually, and because you can access Math-Whizz on any device, I would say, why would you want to pause the tutoring? You know that there's always going to be some downtime, 15, 20 minutes, you know, for a few times during the week when possibly they could do that. So I would urge against actually pausing the tutoring and trying to continue it. But also we've got research as well that actually tells us that children do, if they stop using Math-Whizz during the holiday period, particularly our 6-week period that we have in the UK, that actually they actually end up losing some of that learning that they've been doing during the term time. So by keeping going with the tutor, what it does is retains that, but actually means that they continue to make more gains. So I would say if you can continue it and it works, then I would do that, because it's not a huge ask out of the week. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Junaid.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I mean, I was involved in some of that research, and it's just mind-blowing, just the difference that just an hour a week can make. And it's the difference of 4.5 months. The research is very clear. If your child switches off from learning, particularly in a subject like mathematics, for around 4 to 6 weeks, that tends to result in around 2 to 3 months of lost learning, because you just struggle to retain all of that knowledge. You compare that to the students that use a program like Math-Whizz for 1 hour a week, and their learning goes in the other direction, that they actually gain several weeks worth of knowledge. So it's learning gains versus learning losses. And the difference is 4.5 months, which for an hour a week is just a no-brainer. But I guess there may be extreme circumstances where, you know, maybe you're going to a remote part of the world without internet access. And I guess in those cases, you may not have many options. But I'd always say, you know, keep your child engaged with maths. To your point, Fiona, maths is all around us, right? So even if you don't have access to an online virtual tutor, look for maths in the environment, look for other resources that you can take with you. There are so many ways in which mathematics manifests itself. So it's worth planning for that. The question has come up from Mark on whether we have Spanish Math-Whizz. We do indeed. And so if you, I think if you go to the different options, you can choose from between the different languages. We do have our language translated into our content translated into a few languages, including Spanish. There you go. Hannah's answered it a lot better than I. We do it for schools, not quite ready for parents, but the content is there, so it shouldn't be too long. Okay, my son Joey is finding the lessons too easy. Good for Joey. I guess, well, maybe not great, because it may suggest that the tutor isn't quite in sync with Joey's needs, and you kind of pick that up sometimes as a human tutor. You're offering, you know, you're throwing some questions to your student, and it's just obvious that they're well past that. And so as a tutor, you would adapt and make the questions more difficult, or maybe shift topics. And this goes back to the importance of that initial assessment. It's important that is done as thoroughly and accurately as possible. If your child doesn't try hard enough in that assessment, and they just fail a few of the topic, fail's not the right word, if they get a few of the questions wrong, and that's just because they're not trying very hard, well, then they'll be assessed at a very low level. And that's one reason we often find that when they come back into the tutor, the lessons are too easy. And so sometimes it's tied back to the assessment, and you may want to consider, if that's the case, whether it's worth doing a reassessment. I'd also say slow down. You know, if they really are finding, if they're finding that they're getting through several progressions a week, sometimes we find students making 10, 15, 20 progressions a week. And I'm like, slow down, just seriously slow down, because it's not actually productive in the long run. You really want to make around 5, I'd say 4, 5, 6 progressions a week. That's when you're going to get the accelerated learning. But it's all about long-term consistency. So I would say slow down if that's what's happening and you're making too many progressions. Use replay to really consolidate your learning and to build that fluency. and there's lots of challenges that you can do around that to earn credits. And also, I guess I might ask you, Fiona, what can they do outside of Math-Whizz if they feel like they're getting that fluency and they're getting the fundamentals from within Math-Whizz? We're saying it's 1 hour a week. Well, what can they do with like another hour a week? Well, what would be the next thing that you'd recommend to them if they're looking for more challenge?
On Math-Whizz or otherwise?
I'd say like alongside. So it sounds like Joey would still benefit from, having Math-Whizz, progress along week on week, but maybe also need some stretch content. And as well as consolidating and replay within Math-Whizz, I wonder what other kinds of resources you might point him to really stretch his understanding.
Okay, I mean, for application to really stretch them and to get them really problem solving, probably there's a website called Enrich, which is NRICH, and that's fantastic for just getting children to really problem solve, to apply what they've been learning to problem solving situations. And what's nice on this particular website is it does actually give you a live problem where children can actually submit their solutions as well. So probably that would be one of my places to go to. And then also just thinking about, as I said before, about what you've got in around the home. And we've got lots of things on our website as well, where you can engage your child in lots of different activities. So it might be you want to go to the parents' resources on our website and have a look there and actually do some of those activities as well. And they're very, very much on the line with Enrich, where they're really sort of problem solving activities and also going out and about and using the environment as well to do maths in.
Yeah, Enrich is a big favorite of ours. It's totally free as well, so you can just step in and see what works. And it's just a wonderful way of really applying the knowledge that you're picking up through a tutoring program like Math-Whizz. I might also suggest the primary maths challenge. Yeah, I might also suggest the primary maths challenge. It's a national competition. It's quite informal. You can easily download past sort of questions that they start off fairly straightforward and then become progressively more difficult. I've coached students through it. I think it's worth trying if it's not taken too seriously. You don't want the child to feel like they failed at the end of it, because it's really just a way of kind of flexing their knowledge and applying it in interesting ways. Hopefully they'll find the problems to be quite fun, just like on Enrich. So do check out the primary maths challenge. So thank you, David, for that question. And now we have another one here. Very interesting. I have my children every other weekend and for one night a week. Is that going to be enough to get the benefit from Math-Whizz? So I guess the assumption here is that that's really the only opportunity for them to get onto Math-Whizz is according to that limited schedule. So what would you say there, Fiona?
Well, I think we know what we recommend is that ideally your child needs to be on Math-Whizz for 60 minutes a week. So it's working out whether that works for you, but remembering also that you can access Math-Whizz on all sorts of different devices. So, and the child needs to be ideally working on it independently, depending on their age. So, if you think about those factors, it might be that actually majority of the time is when they're with you, every other weekend and one night during the week. But it might be there's some time that you choose with them when they're not necessarily with you, but they've got access to another device that they could then just do some of it then as well. So, the benefits from Math-Whizz are so huge, the gains they get, that, if you can work it out through scheduling it very carefully, I think then I would say, yes, it is going to be beneficial.
Thanks, Fiona. So we'll move on. This is quite an interesting question. Is there an English program you can recommend? So I would say that at the moment, maths is that area of focus at Whizz. We have worked. We have thought about literacy, various literacy products and initiatives in various projects around the world. And certainly our ambition is to branch out to multiple subjects. And I think English would be one of the first subjects that we'd like to cover. So hopefully in a couple of years' time, the answer to this would be yes, English-Whizz to go alongside Maths-Whizz. Are there any particular programs that you would recommend? I have to confess that I'm not an expert on English language learning here, There's one or two that come to my mind, which I may mention in a moment. But Fiona, any that come to your mind?
I would caution against recommending anything, because it's so vast. When people say an English program, what do they actually want it in? Is it in spelling? Is it in grammar? Is it about storytelling? There's so many different things, and each child is at a very different on a very different part of that journey. So it's the teacher, your class teacher is probably going to be the best one who can recommend something, because it's vast, as in what would be best for them. So it really depends. And I think actually what you need to be as a parent is think quite specifically about what is it I actually want, because it's just so general by saying an English program. So I think you need to narrow that down a bit more, and then I think people can recommend things.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I guess you'd probably say the same for maths program. Maths in itself is quite, it's so diverse. There are so many different goals you can have. I think I'd say virtual tutoring for any subject is always going to give you a very kind of solid foundation. But some of the questions that we've had suggest that there are slightly different goals that different parents have depending on where their child is. And that's why we would recommend a whole range alongside of virtual tutoring. I can't say I know of a virtual tutor for English. There may be some out there. But yeah, I think you're quite right. It depends on the specific learning goals you have in mind. So, okay, I think we'll move on then. How can I share my daughter's progress with my school? I have a couple of suggestions here. It much depends on whether your school is actually partnering with Whizz Education and actually making use of virtual tutoring. If they're not, they should be. I honestly believe that. And so I would say get in touch with the school, and perhaps the first step is for you to be able to show them how your child is progressing, the learning gains that they've made, and some of the reports available to you. And their eyes will light up at that, because that information really is gold dust. So there's a couple of things I might suggest. One is you can just take a screenshot. I would take a screenshot of the topic bars in your parent account and share that with your child's maths teacher or form tutor or whoever, because chances are that they're going to be intrigued by that and they're going to want to learn more. I'm not going to suggest that you share your login so that they can access the same reports, because that's obviously very, very, very sensitive, but maybe the odd screenshot here or there. And if you can arrange a meeting with them, whether that's face-to-face or in the current climate, over Zoom or whatever, maybe you could do a screen share and actually just show them, step by step, the different things you have access to. In my experience, when teachers set eyes on the reports that parents have for the first time, they start to see what's possible, and chances are they're going to have more questions, and that's a good time to put them in touch with us. Math-Whizz always works best when we have parents, children, and teachers all working in unison, what we call the triangle of success. So I love the question because it already gestures towards that. Anything to add, Fiona?
No, that's fine. No, I agree.
Okay, so thanks, Alicia from Dubai for that. And now we go to Scott from Melbourne. So you can see we've got representation from all corners of the globe. My son uses Math-Whizz at school. How can I see his reports? I think this question actually just popped up in the chat as well. So I think Hannah's addressed it. But it really is just a matter of logging into your parent account. So you should know your username and password. If you're not sure or need any kind of guidance at all, support@whizz.com. Hannah and her team will be only too glad to assist you. We also have a live chat feature, Whizz Assist, when you're in your parent account. So if you're in your account and you're just wondering how to get to a particular page, or if you're trying to make sense of what's in front of you, just hit the blue icon. Whizz Assist will pop up, and that's a human at the other end of that. It's not a chat bot or anything like that. And they'll be with you in seconds, ready to talk you through it. It's what we do best. And also look out for your email updates. I think you should get, I don't know the exact schedule, I think it's monthly reports for parents. And it's just a way of kind of checking in with you and reminding you on your child's progress. But I mean, I would say, I think we've done previous webinars, Fiona, where we've impressed on parents the importance of maybe spending 5-10 minutes a week checking your reports. So once you know how, I mean, what would your advice be as a parent yourself as to how often they should then be checking their reports and the kinds of things that they should be looking for?
Literally, I think just dedicating 5 minutes a week just to have a look on there, and just very quickly, just you want to be checking their usage. So although you've scheduled in the time, are they actually doing it, for that amount of time. More importantly, the progressions, just checking that they're gaining at least 3 progressions a week. That is the goal. If they're 4 or 5, great as well. They're going to see even more gains. And then obviously, as Junaid said, the topic bars just gives you an indication of the particular topics that they would have been working on. But then it's quite nice just to maybe ask them a few questions, just to see, if they can then talk about what they've actually been learning about, engaging in that way as well. Is quite nice. It gives a reason to have a bit of a discussion over the maths they've been doing. So that can be quite nice.
Well, thanks, Fiona. And I think we've exhausted the questions that were sent in. I'm just seeing if there's anything else on the chat that we haven't yet covered. But I have a feeling we've addressed most of them. Do you have any further questions, Fiona?
I can see one here that just says, can we declare Math-Whizz as a complete course for homeschooling?
Oh, I'd love to get your answer on that.
Okay, so no, I don't think we can declare it as a complete course for homeschooling. What it will do is it will really give the foundations that you need. It will identify all of those gaps and it will work on all of that. But what Math-Whizz doesn't necessarily do is the things we were talking about, is offering that challenge, the problem solving, applying those skills. And that's the sort of thing you'd need to do alongside that. So Math-Whizz complements all the work that you were doing around maths. I wouldn't just do Math-Whizz in isolation, because although they're going to get the foundations, they also need to practice how to use all of those skills and knowledge as well. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I thought that there was the potential there that we were going to have a slight conflict at the end of this. But no, I'm with you 100%. It really is the safety net. I think particularly during this time of just intense disruption, Math-Whizz is really an insurance policy. Whatever else is going on, if your child is getting onto Math-Whizz for an hour a week, you can feel assured that they're going to have that secure foundation. And you can monitor that as a parent in, day by day, or as Fiona was suggesting, even just once a week, because you can see the measurable learning gains as they occur. It really should fit into a wider program of study. So I agree with Fiona. I would never characterize it as a complete course, but it will always be an integral part of students' development. I think having a virtual tutor will be as common as having car insurance. And I think we're kind of being alerted to that at the moment with so many things that we used to take for granted that are now just up in the air. And the question that we all keep coming back to as parents is, how can we provide that continuity and stability for our children? I think Math-Whizz and virtual tutoring is really the first step, the first piece of that puzzle. When you combine it alongside, your Enrich primary maths challenge, doing maths outdoors, around the house, then it becomes a very rich, holistic homeschooling program. And so you should think about what other pieces you want in place. And it should be very personal to your child's needs and preferences. But virtual tutoring is always going to give them that foundation. It says here, we have a question from Paul, so thank you. Would we recommend the annual or the monthly version of Math-Whizz? I mean, I would say, for me, it's just very clear. It's got to be annual and even longer term, because it's all about the mindset. If you really want to see transformational outcomes for your child, it's not going to happen in 1 month, and it's not going to happen in 2 months or even 3. But if you commit to a year's worth of kind of steady progress, steady study, that's an hour a week over a year, you will see several months in, the tide will start to turn. If it's a battle to get your child to do maths, that will start to change as their confidence grows. If they're behind in the curriculum, you're going to start to see that acceleration. And that's worth committing to, and that's worth thinking about as a long-term program. It's a bit like fitness, right? If you want to become fit, you don't train for a marathon in a month. It takes much longer, and as long as you're making steady progress, it's all very doable. And I would say you can sign up for the monthly subscription if you're not sure, but really commit to the annual, because it will just set you and your child up with the right mindset that you're in this for the long haul, and you can start planning your long-term goals and start to think about that transformation. And also, not for nothing, it's just a lot more cost effective. Right? I mean, for a year's subscription, we're talking, I think it's £149 a year. you would get 3 hours of private tutoring for that. You know, the monthly subscription is also very reasonable, but it just seems a no-brainer that £149 for unlimited access over a year for transformational outcomes, all for an hour a week. So I have to say, I would say the annual for sure. How do I know that my daughter's finished the school year on Math-Whizz? That's a good question. Do you want to take that, Fiona?
Yeah, I can do. So
Hannah's already chipped in saying we've got content up to age 14. High schools might have older students with lower maths age. I think we've covered that already in terms of secondary schools and being able to meet to those needs. But more generally, how do we keep track of where children are on Math-Whizz?
Okay, so the way in which Math-Whizz works is it's a personalised learning journey for your child. So they will progress through the mathematics as and when they're ready for it, and as and when the tutor decides, you know, what they need to be doing. So it doesn't actually work in school years. It's just a continuous journey that they will make progressing through the curriculum. So it works slightly differently as it does to schools because it's very bespoke for your child. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Junaid.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I'd say, you know, this maths age is really what you're looking for in terms of just an indicator of where they are. And it's not to be taken too literally, but and if your child has a maths age of 10, that basically means they're working at the level expected of a 10-year-old, there or thereabout. I mean, I wouldn't get too hung up on it if they have a maths age of 9.98. You know, I wouldn't spill tears over that. But it's a good guide, and so if your child is in year 5, that probably means they're around 10 years old. They should have a maths age of around 10. So that's your kind of indicator. But the power of Math-Whizz, as Fiona says, is that it's personalized to your child. And it looks at their needs topic by topic. And I have to say, this is one of the real advantages that virtual tutoring has over a standard school curriculum. Because in a standard school curriculum, there's an assumption that every child will move forward at the same pace in each topic. And that at the end of year 5, they've all done all the same topics at the same pace, same level of understanding. It's just not true. When we look at the data, we see all around the world that in a typical class of students, there's a knowledge gap of around 4 years separating students. And when you look at any individual student, you'll have seen this for your own child if you're on Math-Whizz, their needs from one topic to the next are so varied. And that's because children are just so incredibly unique. And so that's what Math-Whizz is all about, understanding the uniqueness of your child, addressing their specific needs. It's very useful to have maths age as an indicator, but I would say take advantage of the fact that it's building a learning plan, not based on a specific curriculum scheme, but based on your child's needs. And then, as I say, we work with thousands of schools. If they want to see reporting with respect to a national curriculum, we're able to do that. But the most important thing about Math-Whizz is not whether it aligns to a particular curriculum, but the fact that it aligns to your child's needs. Okay, I think we may have covered all the questions. So unless anything else comes through, let me just say thank you everyone for taking the time. Thanks to everyone who sent a question through, but we're not done. If you have any other questions, please contact us. You can email support@whizz.com. We'll probably run another one of these in the near term, and we'd love to keep getting your more questions from you. It's always a delight to see what's on your mind and to really challenge ourselves to think about how we can better support you with your home learning. So thank you so much for all of your contributions. Thank you to Fiona for taking time. I know that you did this at short notice, but I know how keen you are to speak to parents. So it's been great. So stay in touch. We'll send a follow-up email with a couple of links. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day and week. And if you manage to have one, your summer holiday.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.